Well, hello, all my amazingly beautiful zodiac family and friends. My name is Libra Empress, and this is another episode of Terror and Tarot with Libra Empress. Today, we are going to be watching 4 horror stories animated Walmart Hotel and Santa by IMR Entertainment. Without further ado, let's get started, shall we?
My car died a while back, and I've been using lifts to get around town if needed. I am within walking distance to a good variety of stores, so it hasn't been too pricey for me. However, I recently needed to go to the pharmacy and the pet supply store, both too far to walk. So I go to the pharmacy to pick up my prescription and call my ride to the pet supply store. The driver who picked me up seemed initially very polite, asking how my day was, commenting on the weather, etc. But things got weird very fast. He abruptly asked me if I was hungry. When I said no, he began to insist that we stop at a restaurant to get food, and would not stop until I lied and said that I had just eaten a large lunch. Then he asked if I wanted to get coffee. Again, I said no. He backed off and turned up the radio. A minute later, he asked if I liked music, and if I liked to dance. I answered that I don't care for dancing, to which he asked, well, why not? Then he asked if I like to drink, and if so, what bars do I like? I felt very uncomfortable at this point, and said I don't drink much. Well, why not, he asked again. Not even a little here and there? I lied. The alcohol makes me nauseous. But then he asked if I live alone. I said no, that I live with my husband. He asked how long I've been married, and if I'm happy with my husband. Then he casually asked if my husband is a strong guy, if he hits the gym. I began to feel very panicked at this point. Why would this guy want to know if I live alone, or how physically strong my husband is? He was being very pleasant and cheerful the whole time, but staring intently at me through the rear-view mirror, which disturbed me. I lied a third time that my husband was military, and that I was so happy to have him home with me. He became disinterested after I began gushing about my husband, and then briefly turned up the radio so loud it hurt my ears in the back seat. I'm not even kidding. The windows were vibrating from the noise. When we arrived at the pet store, I jumped out of the car and hurried away. Once in the store, I took my time near the entrance of the store to ensure that the driver had left. I stayed there nearly 40 minutes. It was rush hour, so I was fairly confident he had received another passenger request and left. After buying feed for my bunny, I headed out and requested another ride. I kid you not, dude was waiting in the parking lot and with his car out in front of me as soon as I walked out the door. He accepted my ride request after blocking me from walking into the parking lot. I jumped out of his car and took my bag of feed out of my hands and bundled it into the car. It all happened very quickly, and looking back, I should have canceled my ride right then and there. I regret not putting my foot down and calling him out on his creepiness. I freeze up and start panicking. I tell myself that I'm being dramatic, that it's all just a coincidence. I get in his car and realize with misery that my home address is logged into his GPS. He is very jolly now and asks if I'll be happy to get home. I had a stroke of genius and lied number 4 that I was visiting my friend for dinner. But oh yes, I can't wait to get home later on. It's been such a long day. He didn't seem to like hearing this and gave me the loud radio treatment again. I arrived home and grabbed my bag of bunny feeds so he wouldn't try to help me carry it inside. The driver got out when I did and tried to push a paper into my hand that had his phone number on it, and he said he'll call me tonight when you're ready to go home. Yes, your boy demanded that I call his personal phone to get a ride home after dinner with my friend. I refused, and he tried to force the paper into my hand, grabbing my fingers and crumpling them into a fist around set paper. I lied a 5th time that my friend was driving me home later and dropped the paper on the sidewalk. He finally gave up and got back into his car. I walked up to the door, but then realized that the driver was still parked at the curb watching me. He saw me looking and quickly pretended to mess with his phone. But I suspect he was waiting to see if my friend would come to the door, or if I was lying. I casually knocked on the door, waited a moment, then pulled out my phone as though to call my friend. While making the call, I decided to turn and stare pointedly at him. It worked, and he eventually eased his car out and away. Once he was around the corner, I rushed into the house and locked the door behind me. Thank God, that was the last I saw of him. I live in a military town, so everyone here is either in the military like my husband and I, or they are the locals. Backwoods redneck type you find near the Bible Belt. Most of the general population is pretty poor. A lot of homeless. A lot of, well, there's no nice way to put it. White trash type folk. I live near a Walmart that I usually go shopping at, and during the day it's filled with your usual Walmart shoppers. At night, however, it's usually full of weirdos. Some normal people there, of course, just trying to grab last-minute groceries or medicine or whatever. But some people who just don't have anywhere else to be, or they're high or drunk, and Walmart is open 24/7, so they just come to hang out there like it's a damn arcade or something. Anyway, it was like 11:30 at night, and I realized my daughter was out of formula. I have to make her bottles for the day every morning for daycare, so I had to go get formula before morning. I told my husband I'd be back in a few minutes and drove down the road. In the baby aisle, I grabbed her formula and stopped to look at a cute dress for her. I was looking through the baby clothes when I saw someone out of the corner of my eye and felt the hairs on my arms stand up. I glanced at him and then did a double take. This man was standing there, just staring at me. He didn't seem to be bothered by the fact that I noticed him. I did this weird, nervous fake laugh and said something like, "Oh, these are so cute, huh?" He didn't say anything. He just kind of smirked and kept staring. The dude was like a few inches taller than me, maybe 5'9", white, with long hair, and he looked either homeless or severely down on his luck. He had one hand on the crotch of his pants, kind of nonchalantly, like it just rested there. He was maybe 6 feet away from me. I started to get nervous and felt my palms start sweating. I said something dumb about have a good night and just kind of fast walked away. But in my haste to get away from him, I turned left toward the back of the store. I decided to grab a 12-pack of Coke Zero, in addition to the formula, and then decided to get out of there. I hadn't grabbed a cart, so I couldn't really carry much more. On my way back to the front of the store, I heard him shuffling behind me, keeping pace with my speed walking. I tried to calm myself down and write it off as him just also going to check out. I got into the 10 items or less line. He got in the line behind me. He had no items, but he pulled a candy bar off the shelf and set it on the counter behind my stuff. At this point, I could smell him, and he stank like body odor and stale beer. I turned my head away from him and tried to move a little closer to the woman in front of me. He moved closer too. Then I felt something brush my left butt cheek. I turned towards him sharply and said, "Hey!" He mumbled an apology. Keep in mind, I am wearing jeans and a baggy t-shirt. Not that it should matter, but I look like crap, is what I'm trying to get at. I turned back towards the counter and the cashier started ringing up my 2 items. 2 seconds later, the man pinched my other butt cheek. Hard. At this point, I turned around and said very loudly, "Hey, stop touching my ass!" He turned red and the cashier froze. She asked if there was a problem. "Yes," I replied. "This guy just pinched my butt, and I don't know him, and he's creeping me out." She looked unsure of what to do and asked him to please step away from me before she called security. He did, wordlessly, and then just stood there glaring daggers at me. I pretended I didn't notice and paid for my things. As soon as she bagged up the stuff, I booked it out of the store. I got maybe 10 steps into the parking lot when I heard the doors open behind me. Panicking, I turned and saw him marching directly toward me. I bolted. My car was 2 lanes away, and I yanked out my keys and unlocked it while I ran. I could hear him behind me, grunting and panting. I felt adrenaline kick in and tears in my eyes. I ran, swinging the bag and the case of soda, flung myself into the driver's seat, and turned the key in the ignition before the door even shut. I threw it in reverse without looking just as he slammed his body onto the hood of my car and yelled something. I peeled out of the lot at almost 30 miles an hour, and he flew off my hood and into the ground, and I drove the mile home going well over the limit, breathing hard and feeling like I was going to hyperventilate. When I got home, I still had chills. I raced inside and locked the door. My husband wanted to go find him and beat his ass, his solution for pretty much anything. But I just wanted to shut the windows and crawl into bed. I don't know what makes people do the things they do. Do they not realize how terrifying they come off as? I don't even want to leave my house without mace and a taser and a railgun.
Now, Christmas is where I go all out. It's my favorite holiday of the year, and nothing can stop my Christmas spirit. Unless, if it's what happened this year. Me and my daughter, Beatrice, and her grandparents, my parents, usually go to town and shop for Christmas decor until we can't bear carrying bags over bags of lights and little knickknacks to scatter around the house. But my parents said they couldn't make it this year because my dad has fallen and broke his hip, and my mom had to stay at the hospital to see if he was doing all right. So it was just me and Beatrice. Luckily, they have just opened up a new mall, and it had tons of holiday shops. It was at the back of town, and I was clever enough that the parking spaces would become extinct in 0.5 seconds back there. So I had no choice but to work my way back there, from shop to shop. There was, alas, something I found in there that caught my eye. And before you knew it, it was sold. When we finally got back to the end of town, my backbone felt like it was going to let loose and crumble. I was wanting to hurry up, but then, in the middle of the long hallway, there was a small Santa, looking at me, staring at my daughter. I was a little creeped out, but it was a mall Santa. Those guys wouldn't dare to hurt me or my daughter. But something was off. He was tall, very tall, and he was so skinny that his skin was basically useless at hiding his bones. Beatrice noticed him and started jumping up and down. "It's Santa, Mommy! Look, it's Santa! Can we go over there, Mommy, please?" I agreed, and we slowly walked over to him. There were no kids in like. There was no big display. It was just Santa in a foldable chair. We walked a little closer until he grinned, but from ear to ear showed all his crooked, jagged teeth. That's when my mind freaked, and I turned around and started to walk to the shops. Beatrice quite didn't agree. She started to throw a fit. Beatrice never throws a fit. She then started to scream and growl and bite me like a wild animal. It was horrific. Beatrice never acted like this. I was kind of scared from her, but I picked her up and tried to walk to the car. "But Mommy, it's Santa. Let me see Santa. I hate you. I want to see Santa." I buckled her up, put the bags in the car, and drove off home. But there was something that I remembered. I remembered that the mall Santa said something once. I whipped around. He said something by the lines of, "Bad little kids get put on the naughty list," and chuckled. I became paranoid at that point and couldn't sleep until 10 p.m. I then woke up with Beatrice in my face whispering, "Mommy, Santa is here. Look." I looked at the clock. It was 3 in the morning. I guessed that Beatrice wouldn't leave me alone, so I got out of bed and went to the front door and looked through a window nearby. I froze. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But most importantly, I wanted to hide. There was the same Santa. The Santa that was as skinny as Jack Skellington, and in the same Santa costume as before, rustling through the snow and looking at me while coming to the front door. What scared me the most is Beatrice asking me, "Mommy, where's Santa's sleigh?" I didn't know what to do. I grabbed Beatrice and did something that I regret to this day. I hid her in her bedroom closet and ran to barricade the door. I heard pounding on the front door, and then silence. But only for a little bit. A window shattered. He was inside the house. I needed some self-defense. Then I heard thumps downstairs. But luckily I remembered. There was a vent inside Beatrice's closet. I came in the closet to find Beatrice with all the color drained from her face. I managed to rip the vent cover off the wall and started to crawl inside. I was crawling for a long time, and still a whoosh of air seemed to come from in front of me. It was from outside. I knew that I could somehow get outside and grab an axe. I somehow got the vent cover off and ran in my PJs and went to the shed and grabbed a small hand axe and got a ladder to climb up the wall and went to get back into the house. Luckily, I got back into Beatrice's closet. I locked the door behind me and went back into the barricaded bedroom. The footsteps were coming up the stairs now, slowly. Then there was a large bang on the door. The doorknob twisted, turned. Then it stopped. The footsteps went down the stairs and out the front door. Then I realized that I left the vent cover open, and then I left the ladder there too. I then heard Beatrice scream and laughter in the vents. I heard her wail and scream. Beatrice's life was in my hands. Out of nowhere, I cut the door with my axe over and over again until I made a hole. It reminded me of the scene in The Shining. I reached my hand in the hole and unlocked the door. I slammed the door open to find nothing. Nobody there. Not even Beatrice. I looked out the window and saw the mall Santa carrying a large sack that was moving. That's when I called the police. A few days later, they came to my house and handed over Beatrice, while telling me the whole story. The Santa was a homeless serial killer hunting down children that were bad or disrespectful to their parents. My daughter was one of the lucky ones that survived. To this day, I still don't know what to expect.
I worked as a flight attendant for a few years when I decided to take an extended sabbatical from college. There were a handful of let's not meet situations that I encountered, but one in particular still makes my skin crawl more than any other. I was born and raised in Texas, but had moved to New York when I was 21, so when I found out at the beginning of a week-long trip that I'd have a couple of overnights in Austin, I was super excited to go to my home state for a few days. My brother lived just north of the city, and we planned to hang out and go to dinner the night I arrived when he got off work. And the following day we were going to meet up with our dad, who only lived about an hour away. So I get to the hotel downtown. The crew and I check in, and then we each head off to our own rooms. A short elevator ride and I get to mine, where not even 5 minutes later, there's a loud, hard knock on the door. It was only around 1 or 2 p.m., and I hadn't called either my dad or brother to let them know I was in town yet. They definitely wouldn't know what my room was. I assumed it was maybe one of my crewmates, so I headed over to the door. Before even making it to the door, however, a loud male voice boomed on the other side. The front desk sent me about the bathroom problem you called in, before he tried to open the door. Unlock the door and open up, miss. I need in now. I froze in my tracks. I hadn't even been in the bathroom yet, let alone called anything to the front desk. I'm a fairly petite chick, and while I take no shit from anyone despite my size, I still err on the side of caution. Slowly inching toward the door, I look out of my peephole. All I could tell was that the man on the other side was at least 6 foot tall, easily over double my height. No way in hell I was going to unlock the door. I responded to the man, telling him that he must have had the wrong room. He continued to pound away while constantly turning the handle, telling me that he needed in, and he was getting in one way or another. I panicked, but thankfully I had the sense to grab the phone and call the front desk. The concierge confirmed that they had neither sent anyone up to my room, nor had they received a call about the bathroom. The entire time, this fucking guy was still determined to get into my room, pounding and yelling. Luckily for me, the front desk had dispatched security to my floor right away. When the security officers step off the elevator a few seconds later, I can hear them in the hall approach and ask the man who he was, what he was doing, and telling him he needed to leave the hotel. He immediately got hostile, and the front desk clerk I'm still on the phone with tells me the police had been called and were on their way. In the meantime, I was trapped in my room, scared shitless. Long story short, the cops show up pretty quickly and arrested the guy for trespassing and criminal menacing or some shit. I later found out that the man was wanted in connection to a string of break-ins and violent sexual assaults in Austin. He had seen and stalked me from the minute I entered the hotel lobby. Apparently, I was exactly his type of victim. Nothing else happened after that, but it still rattled the fuck out of me for the rest of my stay in this hotel.
That was 4 horror stories animated by IMR Entertainment. They were pretty good, actually. And while we were watching that, I pulled 5 cards from the dead spread, and this is the person we're connecting with, alright? They were a very romantic and adventurous person, but a bit moody on occasion, right? They had a bit of a player-player streak. Now, looking back on their life and how they see it, they knew they should have rested, recovered, recouped, and they needed to, but they chose not to. They ignored their needs. Now, a lesson they would like to share is that, sometimes you're going to hit poverty. But here's another thing, that there's a blessing coming your way. When they needed a blessing, it came their way. They didn't expect it, but they were grateful for it. Now, something they wish they had paid more attention to would be the manipulation. They were being manipulated, and I dare say they were also a bit of a manipulator as well. Now, a message they would like to give you is this, that you're dealing with a Capricorn, right? Or maybe they were a Capricorn, but there's a lot of crookedness in regards to money. So finances, just illegal activity. So be careful with whoever that is. Or maybe they did that stuff and they don't want you to follow in their footsteps. Alright? Well, thank you so much for listening to me. My name is Libra Empress. Please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. And I will see you for next week's Tarot and Tarot with me, Libra Empress. I love you. Bye, my beautiful friends. Stay safe.